Hello, welcome back. It was just another evening in Baton Rouge, quiet and still, until everything changed inside the home of Pastor Jimmy Swaggart as he rested in his study. The well-known televangelist suddenly collapsed. A man who had given his life to preaching hope and healing was now in urgent need of both. His family rushed to help. Paramedics arrived quickly, and it was confirmed he had gone into cardiac arrest. As they worked on him, his wife Frances stood by, praying and holding his hand, her heart full of fear but also faith. Word of Jimmy's condition spread fast, first through the local community, then across online prayer chains and church networks. The news shocked many who had grown up listening to his sermons and music. There was no immediate official statement. The family stayed silent, processing the moment, holding close to one another and to God. But outside the silence, the world responded with love. Messages poured in. People shared stories of how Jimmy's preaching led them to Christ, how his music comforted them through dark times. Churches held special services. Believers everywhere were crying out for divine healing, the same kind of power Jimmy had always preached about. 2 days later, the family broke their silence. Donnie Swaggart stood before the congregation, his mother Frances and other family members nearby, with a heavy heart. He told the church what had happened. Jimmy was still alive, but in critical condition, sedated so his body could rest and recover. Frances stepped forward next, thanking everyone for the outpouring of prayers and love. She recalled how she was right there when it happened, how she saw the fear in his eyes give way to peace as she prayed by his side. Her words were quiet but powerful. They asked everyone to keep praying, not just for healing, but for strength, peace, and God's will to be done. Meanwhile, at the hospital, the Swaggart family set up a private room where prayer and worship continued. Around the clock, Frances barely left Jimmy's side, often whispering scriptures to him. Donnie, Gabriel, and others stayed close, rotating shifts, never leaving him alone. Gospel music played softly in his room. Nurses described a peace there that felt holy. Back at Family Worship Center, a wave of prayer swept through the church. People gathered with no fanfare, no preaching, no concerts, just prayer. Many cried quietly, others sang softly, the sanctuary filled with love. Leaders soon organized a formal prayer gathering, and word spread quickly. By nightfall, people filled the church and overflow areas. Some had driven hours to be there. The choir sang hymns Jimmy loved, and Donnie spoke again, this time as a son, grateful and humbled. Frances also addressed the crowd, speaking not from fear but from faith, saying they were there not because they were afraid, but because they believed. The next day, doctors gave the family a difficult update. Jimmy's condition remained very serious. His heart was beating on its own, but his body was weak. He hadn't regained full consciousness, and the next couple of days would be critical. Donnie shared this update with the congregation with honesty and strength. Frances issued a brief message to the public, thanking everyone and asking for continued faith-filled prayers. People around the country responded with a deeper reverence. They began praying not just for healing but for peace in homes everywhere. Candles were lit in Jimmy's honor, sermons and songs were replayed. Prayers were whispered late into the night. All over the world, churches joined in. From tiny chapels in Georgia to massive gospel gatherings in Nigeria, people paused their services to pray for Jimmy. Social media was filled with testimonies, memories, and prayerful messages. Hashtags began trending. Some who had never met him spoke of how deeply his sermons had impacted them. Gospel artists and preachers shared videos, thanking him for opening doors for their ministries. Young people prayed for him as if he were part of their own families. Christian radio stations played his music non-stop. Callers shared emotional stories of how his words had helped them through pain and loss. It was more than just an emotional moment, it became a global spiritual movement. People were honoring a man who had always pointed them toward the cross. His legacy was alive and speaking through every voice lifted in prayer. At the hospital, doctors continued doing all they could. But more powerful than medicine was the presence of unshakable faith. Frances stayed by Jimmy's side, whispering prayers, never giving up hope. She softly said, even if the body is weak, the spirit can remain strong. As the Swaggart family read the thousands of messages being sent from around the world, they were reminded of Jimmy's own words. He once said he might never meet everyone in this life, but if they served the same Jesus, they'd meet in glory. And now, even in the uncertainty, that promise felt nearer than ever.